When it comes to the topic of choosing a main in a fighting game, I might be the least qualified person to make a video about it. In almost every one of the games that I've ever invested time into, I haven't really been able to stay loyal to one character for very long, to the point where I might as well just change my tag to Captain Character Crisis. I either decide on a main, and then soon after switch to somebody else that piques my interest, or I just rotate through the several characters that I like after each game. It's not exactly the most efficient way to improve at one of these games, and I end up plateauing and getting bored, and then I move on to the next game. Now my problem isn't that I don't like any of the characters enough to devote my time to them. My problem is that I often like too many of the characters and can't force myself to narrow my focus in order to improve. And because of this, I've been exposed to a lot of advice from a lot of different sources on how to pick a main in any game. I've personally found more success with some of these tactics than others, but everybody learns and discovers things differently, which is why there is no clear way to go about this decision. And in the spirit of trying out many things, I'm going to try to present the various ways in which I've decided on a character in any fighting game. Hopefully one or more of these can help those who are indecisive like myself pick one or two out of the potential 80 that are supposed to be in Smash Ultimate by the end. You don't need to employ all of the methods of finding a character, but using the ones that you think are helpful based on your own criteria and values might serve you well. So let's begin. Number 1. Explore the character select screen. Alright, I know this one is almost too obvious and most players are going to do this anyway, but it's worth mentioning. If you're just starting with the game and don't have any sort of idea which characters are even interesting to you, then take a look through the character select screen. Now this is assuming you have either unlocked all the characters, or you can watch some content online that shows off this screen. You'll want to take note of any characters that you think look interesting just through their portrait. This likely isn't going to be the deciding factor for choosing a main, but it's useful in narrowing down your options. Number 2. Play each of the characters that you've decided on. The next logical step is to take the fighters that you think you'll like and actually play them. Note which of the characters actually feel good to play in terms of movement and attacks, as well as the characters that feel intuitive to you. Test out their aerials, their grounded attacks, their throws, their edge guarding, and their recovery. It's important not to focus on winning at this point and just find what feels good to perform. The aspect of feeling good with a character is more important than people think for several reasons. First, if the character seems to suit you in the way that they play, then you're likely to enjoy it more and not feel like you're fighting to make the character work for you. Second, it separates the physical appeal of a character from the visual appeal. In some games, there are characters that just look awesome when played well, but the actual physical motion of performing what the character does may feel off to some people. An example for me would be Hit in Dragon Ball FighterZ, because he looks so crazy cool when doing even the most basic moves, but the actual inputs and stance switches needed to play him well just don't feel right to me, and there are plenty of other cool folks to choose from. So you can use this feeling-based approach to decide between several characters if that's what's giving you trouble. As a side note, for those watching who are interested in the game but don't have it yet, then watch footage of all the characters that you think you might find interesting. If you watch the gameplay of the characters and decide that none of them look attractive to you while they're in action, then you may need to find footage of all the characters and see if there are cool aspects you didn't think certain characters had. Character breakdowns and guides are great for this. For me personally, an important characteristic of picking a character is how they look in the menu, during the game, and even the windscreen. It seems petty and pointless to focus on such trivial things, but when you invest enough time into a character, they become sort of a representation of you as a player, and personally I like my characters to look good in victory and defeat. So when I'm watching gameplay footage of a game I don't have yet, what I'll typically do is take note of all the characters that I think look really cool, and then play them when I have the chance. Number 3. Watch professional players to see what the characters are even capable of. Casual gameplay is nice to get a general sense of how the character looks in-game, but professional gameplay can show off some of the more advanced techniques available to certain characters, which can inspire you to pick up someone you had never even considered playing before. Take a look at Snake, for example. Casual gameplay can show that he's got tons of explosives, but a professional can show you this. So while your initial playing test may not have revealed the potential of what a character can do, knowing that there is more to be learned can influence your decision. This also brings up the caveat of character-specific tech that you may need to learn in order to be proficient with them. Knowing these technical demands ahead of time gives you the opportunity to ask yourself whether or not that tech is something you are willing to invest your time in, because in some cases it's vital for the character, and trying to work around it may be detrimental to your progress. Number 4. Have a game plan. If you're typically drawn to certain characters in other games for whatever reason, then you might want to explore characters that are similar in aesthetic or gameplay. Perhaps you usually gravitate to rushdown characters, so using that as a starting point when picking a main in Smash can streamline the process. If you played other Smash Bros. Games, it seems obvious to play the characters that you have experience with, if only to get a sense of how they changed and what stayed the same. Just playing around with a character you're more familiar with will also show you how the game itself has changed since the last iteration. You can use this time to find out what you still like about your comfortable character and what they might lack now, and that can guide you to similar characters. But don't be afraid to abandon your game plan. While knowing what you like in other games can help guide some people to their main, it can also have the unwanted side effect of arbitrarily limiting your choices. It's a new game, so try out new characters, new archetypes, and discover your preferences without the baggage of other games. If character loyalty is something you value, then you might want to stick with them, but if you're a character loyalist having a character crisis, then don't feel shackled by what's comfortable. Number 5. Consult a tier list. Now, I might receive some flack for this one because many people believe that tier lists are either inaccurate, which they certainly are at this stage in the game, or that character strength shouldn't influence your decision making. I do agree on some level that these can be true, but it's the way in which you use the tier list information that's important. Of course, most people want their character to be at least moderately strong and not any sort of hindrance to their game because of a lack of tools. But when looking at tier lists, make sure to focus on the reasoning behind the character placements, as that's where you'll get the vital information about them in the context of the game as a whole. Long-form videos on tier lists, as well as some of the ones posted by pros online, usually involve some sort of rationale which lay out the strengths and weaknesses of the cast, and here you can use what you might like or dislike in a character to inform your choice in a main. For example, if someone suggests that Olimar is top tier because he's the strongest zoner in the game, this might be completely irrelevant to you if you don't like zoning characters. Alternatively, if someone suggests that Cloud is a character with good aerials but has a bad recovery, you might still pick him up if that weakness doesn't deter you from what you like about him. It's all about how you use the information available to you. Number 6. Find the fundamentals characters. One common question I see asked online, and one that I've asked myself for other games, is who is a character that is good to learn the game with? This may be a way not only to decide on a character you think you can succeed with, but also to learn the core concepts of the game. Marth is one of those characters that I see a lot of newer players pick up because his toolset is straightforward and helps players learn the fundamentals of spacing and movement, but they often stick with him due to his high potential and the fact that he's decently fun. Some other common characters for learning are Mario, Captain Falcon, Sheik, Ike, Pit, Ness, and Cloud. If you disagree with the ones I've chosen, or can think of any that I forgot, then let people know in the comments. Number 7. Play random. This can expose you to characters you've never had any intention of even testing out for one game. Now granted, if you've shown complete disinterest in a certain character by looking at them in their gameplay, it's unlikely that you're suddenly going to have a change of heart by playing them in game. But first of all, you never know until you try. There are a number of characters in many games that I originally had no interest in playing based on either the visuals or the preconceived ideas I had about them, but when I actually gave them a shot, they ended up being much more enjoyable than I thought they would be. And second, you might perform well with one or more fighters that have a similar game plan and style to each other, and you can use that information to inform who your main should be. For example, if you're deciding between Lucina, Bowser Jr., and Incineroar, but you've noticed you also do well with Bowser and DK, then another big boy might be your best bet. Number 8. Try out Squad Strike. If you're still having trouble deciding between a bunch of characters, I would recommend giving Squad Strike a try. I found that in making up a 5-character roster, I'll often swap out a character or two every couple of sets or so, but there will be 2 or maybe 3 characters I always include in my team. I almost always enjoy the ones that I switch in and out, but I figure that if there are fighters I always have in my team, those are the ones that I enjoy the most and I should spend my time focusing on. Now, number 9 is probably the best advice I've ever read on the topic, and I wish I could remember where I read it, so if anyone knows, please tell me. But the idea is this: play the character you can lose with and still enjoy the game. This alleviates a lot of stress during the learning process and allows you to keep a positive mind when you're getting bodied over and over. Now, this won't apply to everyone because some people either enjoy many characters in this way or no characters in this way. But if there are no characters you can enjoy the game with while still losing, then you're probably focusing too much on the win. If you're someone who enjoys a lot of characters like myself, I wish I could give you the magic advice that would help you decide on which character to choose, but I simply don't have that answer. I kinda wish I did because it would make the process a lot easier for myself, but I guess sometimes you just have to make the harsh decision and just pick one. My recommendation for you if you reach this point is to evaluate what you want from the game, between success or improvement, fun, or personality and style. There's definitely some overlap between these three categories, but these are the ones I think most people fall into when it comes to character choice. If you're a new player looking to improve quickly and not be held back by a character, definitely check out the fundamental characters. It's a really efficient method for long-term improvement. In the long run, you can also check out the tier lists to see what's strong at a given time, because generally, weak characters can slow your progress. But if quick improvement is your goal, then I would recommend avoiding strong characters that are also technically demanding. These characters usually have high execution barriers with situation-specific applications that require an understanding of the game to use them properly. And this applies to all fighting games. Whether you're dealing with Peach in Ultimate, Fox in Melee, Ibuki in Street Fighter, or the Mishimas in Tekken, there are characters that need to be learned separately from the game itself. Now, if you're looking at getting the most fun out of a character, it's really up to you to know what's fun. But there is a slight correlation I find between fun and strong characters. If you enjoy winning more than losing, then a stronger character will theoretically get you that win more often than the weak ones. Some of them also tend to have more options that allow players to express themselves through gameplay. The third category, style and personality, is an interesting one because different people define it differently. Style is certainly linked to a person's own style of play, but it can also have to do with character choice. Besides upsets, you'll usually find people referencing style when someone performs well with a super technical character, in which case you might want to look to main one if that's your goal. But the other way to produce hype through character choice is by excelling with a low tier character. You'll likely have to work a lot harder for your victories, but if showing off a character you believe can succeed despite being considered weak is what you value, then grind it out and show everyone wrong. And with all of that being said, at the time of recording this, the game is super new and locking down your main character doesn't need to be your focus this early on. Even the professional players and content creators like Leffen and Zero have yet to decide on their character of choice, so don't feel too pressured to settle down yet. And if you aren't planning on going pro or attending tournaments in the hopes of winning, then you probably don't need to limit yourself to one character. But I understand from personal experience that there is an allure to having a character you can call your own and stand your ground with, so hopefully one or more of these tips can help someone in their decision. But I've rambled for long enough, so that's all for me. Later days, everyone.